everybody, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Tonight we got a great show for you with my co-host David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Welcome to the show, number 154.
154. Greetings and blessings to all of you as usual. And we continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from our Creator. And we also pray that you're doing as well as possible. Keep up the good work.
Hold on the fort.
And, hold down the fort. So, and always, we hope that you're doing well in whatever's going on in this world. I'll tell you what, it's a crazy world. So you have to keep your faith and believe. And tonight we got a good story for you. We'll let you know what it is. The plume.
That's right. Good story. And we're gonna hang on if I can find it here. I got stuff to find. And we're gonna be moving on from the coast. We're gonna move on to the Plains Indians. There's lots of good stories out there. When the colonies came in and disrupted their whole lifestyle. It was not a good thing. As soon as I can find this. But anyway, the idea is that when, new people move in, you move out. Is that not true? Oh,
yeah.
And that's what the Indians did. They moved out slowly, little by little by little. We don't think much of it, but, they didn't, because land was not owned. You just kind of battled for your territory. Well, that's kind of how, these people did. They just battled for territory, and you're moving, you battle harder, and you move the other people out, and then you move in. And that's kind of how these people kind of were. And we are going to look at some more pictures tonight, put it that way. We are going to look at pictures again. And, but to roll up in this, we're going to talk about some of the pictures, and then we're going to talk about the Indians and why they were moving west and who was out west. That's the biggest thing. So, you feeling anyway? We got people in the chat. We got Chloe and Scotty Boy. We got Chris Smith. He says the Eagles have landed. And let's see, who else do we got? I guess that's all that we got in the chat at the moment. But hello, and Scotty Boy, giddy up. Yes.
And
thank you.
And they moved west to go conquer the giants.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. There might have been others out there living, but they never recorded. Remember, most of this stuff was recorded by oral tradition, and some of it was recorded by oral tradition because we did read a bunch of those stories that included giants, didn't we?
Yep, old Stonecoat. He's in a bunch of stories.
That's right. That is right. Elderberry's in the house.
And the stories talk about how the giants, that many of them were, ate and were carnivores.
Yeah. Yes, definitely carnivores. Which is kind of weird because, if you wouldn't eat your own. But then again, I was just having this discussion with a friend of mine tonight, and we were talking about giants. And he says, it's all fake. It was just giant people. People had kids and they said they're giants, so they sent them off to the giant village or something. And I'm like, that just doesn't fly. I'm thinking they were just a different species of human. Just like you have a different species of deer or monkeys. We'll just use monkeys, for instance. How many monkeys are there in this world? Bunches of different species. Everything from a big giant gorilla to a little monkey you can hold in your hand. The problem is that they're all of the monkey business, but they're all different species. And I think that there was different species of humans, everything from Neanderthals to Denisovians to Cro-Magnon, and there must have been a different one. Some Hobbit-looking people too. But the
A,
thing is,
a different genome is
yes,
what it is. A
yes,
different genome. And absolutely, because there are so many different types of, birds, for example, and so back in the day before they started scrubbing this information, I remember, and I wish I could find it, but they've scrubbed so many things about giants off the internet. But there was, they had giants that were 75 feet tall.
yeah,
And then they had, and that was like the big group. And they had another 70, another subset that was in the 35-foot range. And then they had another subset that was in like the 20-foot level, give or take. And then there was some that was like in the 10, 12-foot. And
yep.
I mean, this was the subsets of the giants. And they had bones of these things because that's how they came to be able to classify them. Well, there's a 35-footer. He goes in this one. Whoa, there's a 75-footer. He goes over here. So, but the Smithsonian and whatever, they have hidden a bunch of stuff from us.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's what I was telling him is that, when a farmer found a bone in his field, he would say, hey, I found a bone. And he says, oh, it's just a horse bone or something like that. And I says, you'd think if you're a farmer, you'd know what a horse bone looks like.
Oh, yeah.
You have horses. You definitely know what a horse bone looks like. But when you find a bone that's bigger than you, or you can just tell, you might not know where it goes, but it's not from anything you know about.
Yeah.
I could tell you what a horse bone looks like or a cow bone, but when you get something that's big and huge and you know what kind of bone it is, but you just don't know what animal it goes in, that's when you start questioning things. And like Christmas says, Catalina Island had giants. The island had a large burial ground, all removed and desecrated. I bet you by the Smithsonian Institute too. But see, that's the thing is they want to remove that history because I hate to say it, but humans are kind of a violent, weird group. I mean, when we see something or somebody different, we try to eliminate them and be all like. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, the Indians are there, but they're savages. We got to turn them into white people. That's kind of what I'm getting at is that's how it seems to work. There's no way around it. We are just like that. Hey, you don't believe in my religion, I'm going to kill you off, and or you're not of this descent. You don't belong to that king. I'm killing you off. You see what I mean? It's always that way.
And it's always like, hey, Billy Bob, shooting for he gets us.
Well, that too. But if you're not in my clan, then you're not the right clan. That's just the way it is. And we do that with ourselves. Can you imagine if there was a group of people who looked different? Say they had two heads, we'd kill them off in a hurry. Oh, we can't have that. They're different.
Really?
Yeah. You have to be like everybody else. That's why when people are different, like if you're midgets or you're extra tall or you look weird, people single you out and push you to the side, don't they? I've seen it happen. You don't look like everybody else. You don't conform. You dye your hair a funny color and put an earring in your pierce your nose. Everybody looks at the person and goes, I'm coming in my group. Go away. You see, what I'm saying?
There are a bunch of folks who are doing that. Man, a good friend of mine, his wife, come to visit me and she had blue hair and I was like, no, you're 65 years old. No, no.
Yeah,
okay.
That's
what I should do. I should dye my hair red or something, put streaks in it. I don't think so.
No, no. But you're right. The thing is it's getting to be more acceptable nowadays. Um, where like tattoos. I mean, you've been around a long time. Remember when tattoos were like, you better cover that up. You couldn't even get it if
Yeah,
you cut.
and then
You couldn't.
grandma gets one. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
like, what? No, but here's the weird thing. Um, you say, it's now more acceptable. Well, here's the strange thing. I still don't accept it. I just put up with it.
yeah,
Is there
exactly.
is there a difference? So
Yeah.
I know, and I have stopped and thought about it to myself and went, wait a minute, or do you really accept that? No, I hate that blue haired shit. I'm sorry. I don't like a bone in the nose. No, I don't. You're going to serve me. Now, if you're working back somewhere and I don't have to see you, I'm okay, but if you got to serve the public or something, I'm absolutely totally against the blue haired and all this, for serving people. I think it ought to just be, not necessarily clean cut, but leave the blue hair out of it.
Well, here's the thing. You've been around a long time. You know, I'm just saying is 50 years ago, if you had blue hair and tattoos all over your body and on your face and a pierced nose, could you get a job?
No,
No,
because
exactly.
at that time they would have considered you a hippie. And as I was growing up in Tampa, my hair wasn't even to my shoulders. Okay,
Yep.
it was just longish, and there were folks, I can't hire you. You're a hippie. And I'm like, wait a minute, I just got out of high school. My hair ain't even to my shoulders. I'm working on it. But, and so it took me a while to get a job, and it was not in front of the public because my hair was a little long. And I was like, wait a minute. So, no, the things that folks do now would absolutely what back in when I was growing up, and I'm going to say 69 because I was graduating high school and all through the 70s and all. This stuff would not be tolerated. Period.
Mm-hmm.
You want to look like that, then you go work for a clan somewhere. You go find a. Oh, you can't. Nah, you ain't working here.
Yeah, well, but that's exactly it. Nowadays, they don't think, like you said, they either tolerate it or they accept it, one or the other, but people don't do that. You go there, you got long hair and a bone in your nose, they say, I can't really, heck, you can call yourself a purple dragon. And they would be like, okay, yeah, because we have to accept you. We have to tolerate you. And they do. I mean, I've been
And
places and the waitress comes up and she's going to wait on you, and you look at her and go, oh my God, I don't even want her touching my food.
I
Sorry,
went
everybody.
to IHOP, which was one of my favorite places to go, and this has been a couple of years ago. But there was this person. He was born a guy, but he, I was like, oh God Almighty, you know, can I get another waiter, waitress, somebody, other than this? I guess it's a person. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
whether to call it a he or a she or a they or whatever. And I like to have conversation with the waiter or waitress, when they serve me, and I try to be polite, and I didn't know what to do. I was
Mm-hmm.
in total confusion. I was like, well, thank you. I'll take the number 5.
Yeah, but I know exactly. That's the whole thing. Is things have changed, and
Oh boy.
I'm saying if there was giants, people would have the Indians. The myths and legends tell about them hunting them down because they were different. They had red hair, mustaches, and beards, and ate people. We don't know if they ate people or not, but the thing is they were different than the Indians, right?
Well, but some of the Hopi and out there in that area, their oral traditions discuss how these giants were, 8 people. So in
Yeah.
the oral traditions, they're, the giants ate folks. In the written traditions, no. But except in the stories that are told, like Stonecoat, um, yeah, Stonecoat, I got that right. Um,
Mhm.
um, One of the things too, back in the late 1700s, early through the 1800s, when they were digging up bones, there were some folks who would go around, and if you see some of these old newspapers, they had like carnivals and sideshows, and they had the bones of a giant, in a box, pay a nickel, and you can, go look at them.
That's
So,
right.
but anyway, but the idea that, giants never existed, that is a lie.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree totally. So yeah, it is a lie. I mean, I got books that talk about how they found bones when people, especially when they were digging up the mounds. They were moving into places and there was mounds there. They dug up moved the mound. And they found giant bones and they found swords and axes and things like that that the Indians didn't really use. So kind of makes you wonder.
Yeah, in this one, I I found a couple of things about Native Americans and Mesoamericans and so forth. And here recently, they discovered a sword that is like a Viking sword. It's a big sucker,
Yeah.
And no, the Mesoamerica, didn't make them. However, I also found out. I hope I'm not stepping on your toes with this one,
Oh, oh.
but because we've discussed how DeSoto and what was the other guy that came up, through Florida and all the way up, and
DeSoto and was it LaSalle? LaSalle came up
yeah,
the Mississippi,
yeah, yeah, and there
and
was another one too, and one came
Cortez.
about
I don't think it was
16.
Cortez. Cortez? No, Cortez was in
Yeah,
South America.
he was in
Mm.
South America, but
Um,
there was another there was another Spaniard, but anyway. They were talking about how when they came up, looking for gold, and they were looking for food, and how they got up to the Indian mounds up in Georgia and found a bunch of corn, like we had talked about, and how much the corn they had, and how much the Coosa Indians, which were sort of an offshoot of lived up right up there with the Cherokee, and which became the Cherokee basically, and so how they had basically run off the population because there was like 600 of these guys, and they had made it
mhm.
all the way from the coast all the way up to northwest Georgia,
Yeah.
and had been plundering and looking for food and stuff. And then when it got up north, they found all these great big huge fields of corn, and the
Mhm.
fact that the Coosa had a bunch of corn stashed and stored. So by the time these 600 men got done, they had eaten all the corn off in the fields and had eaten all the stores of corn, and then left the villagers who were still hiding out in places without any food.
Mhm. That's kind of
And
how they did it.
also, and one of the things that they found out was that because the Indians, and we talked about this before, because the Indians interacted with these men, they caught colds and viruses, and it killed off a third of the population by the time the Spanish got back down to the ocean. A third of the Indians were already dead
Yeah.
just from diseases.
Yeah. No,
And I
I
was
know.
like,
No, I
so
know.
there were millions of people back in those days. There was 100,000 up there in the Coosa area and all that. And so you take a third of those people, that's a bunch of folks that died.
Well, yeah, these tribes were decimated. 90%, half the tribe was gone. They didn't know how to control these diseases, smallpox. They had no immunity, no doctoring to survive it. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what germs were. And besides that, they lived in kind of communal houses, like, the teepee or the longhouse or something like that, where bunches of them lived in the same house all winter long, basically, with
Well,
I would say, I
they,
hate to say, but poor living conditions, I would say.
well,
When,
I've been in some really nice teepees, and it wasn't necessarily poor living conditions, but they were living together in close quarters, and that is
Mhm.
absolutely true. But something in this, if I can find it again, I'll send you the link to watch. But um, they said that 20 years later, another guy came up the same basic general way. And because they had a whole new set of diseases when they came, they wiped out another third of the remaining population. So now
Yeah,
the Native Americans in 20 years didn't really have a chance to recover. But so then here comes the Spanish again, and without lifting a sword or fighting them, they killed off another third. I was amazed. You
yeah,
and I have talked about this in our mini sessions and storytelling, but when they were describing how many folks were actually killed just from diseases, I was
yeah,
like, oh my God, oh
yeah.
my God. Millions of people died, native folks who were here. Oh my God. Not just a couple 100,000 where people might say, well, the kid will off some. No, we're talking a genocide like Hitler kind of thing. Millions of people died. But anyway,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. You're exactly right. Millions of people died, and tribes were literally wiped out or dismantled, and mingled with other tribes, and literally became a whole new tribe. Um, because when you don't have many members, you need more members um, you know to
To
get
survive,
survive.
they had to get together to survive. Absolutely.
Um, okay, here's a good
Oh,
question, Carol. Look at Carol. I met her in Mandan. She has a bookstore. Pretty sure that the question: do we have any real history about mega buildings that were in the USA before the native folk, from the native folk? Far as I know, I do not have any solid information on that at the moment yet. How about, what do
what
you think?
they did do, but these things didn't last long. Like Etowah Mounds in Georgia,
Yeah.
like the Mound City in Alabama, like the big mounds out there in St. Louis, where the St. Louis has given back some land and a mound back to the native folk.
And there's also
So
that big mound in Illinois too, and Cahokia. Yeah, Chris says Cahokia was there too. Yeah, there are those mounds. I think we did one show where we talked about the mounds, and was it Georgia? I think it was that one. It's near you, and
yeah, well, yeah, there's Kolomoki Mounds that is due west of me. And then in watching this other show, I remember and I found out that there are Indian mounds that are south of me, just west of Tallahassee, down
mm,
near Lake Jackson. And I was like, oh man, that it's nothing elaborate like the big mounds, but they're still Indian mounds. And so
mhm,
it's like, and they have dated some of this stuff to 2,000 years ago. It's not
mhm.
because there's a lot of prehistoric stuff in Florida. They still find mastodon bones, and there's certain rivers around in Florida that you can walk in and pick up shark's teeth and stuff that are 1 million years old. So
Oh yeah,
that's kind of stuff down here. But yeah, there are more mounds, and so, but from a standpoint, the builders of them, they built very nice lodges and wooden structures because that was their choice of building material. It's like down here in the South, you'd play hell to try to build something with rocks. Now, there are places around here, and they have built stone walls, some of them about 3 foot tall. And it was just enough for the Indian to get down and shoot from behind. But there's the old stone fort up in Tennessee, near Tullahoma, which is a big Indian place up there in that area of Tennessee. And but the old stone fort, the fort is nothing more than a bunch of rocks on the top of this big hill. But they cleared off this big hill. It's at least the size of a football field, if not bigger. And so that's where they set up. And on two sides of them were two different creeks that came together at the head. And so if they wanted to be attacked, people had to come up really steep sides, and then they had the little stone wall all the way around it. So it's interesting. So they did build things, but not in the monolithic.
Oh yeah, well, and no, and that's the thing. See, here's another thing. When they were digging up these bones, I got books on this too. When they were moving in, people were moving in and dismantling a lot of those mounds to build cities and houses and farms and stuff like that. They dug up giant bones and found things in there that weren't really like the Native American stuff. Some of them were, and some of them weren't. And that makes it controversial because a lot of that stuff disappeared. And today, they've made so many laws and stuff that you can't dig in any of the mounds anymore. They're all protected. So, it just it makes you start wondering, are they trying to hide something? Is that, or, were was there a different race here that actually built the mounds? Because as we know from the Indians we've studied, they put more time and effort into growing crops and conquering other tribes and protecting their territory instead of building mounds with woven baskets carried on their backs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like the pattern, because it's like, okay, these mounds, they say, were built 1,000 years before, but then something changed, and then all of a sudden they didn't build mounds anymore, because none of the natives that they encountered when the Europeans first landed here were building mounds. They never said, oh, look at this tribe, they're building this giant mound over here. I never found a record like that. Have you?
Right. And one of the things that one program I watched about that the Mesoamericans, meaning, all the way down through South America and all the way up, that when you look at some of the artwork that came from some of the mounds, like in the Midwest and there around St. Louis, it looks very much like Inca or Mayan. And so these folks migrated out of South America up through Mexico. And, they were, been through Mexico. There's a bunch of desert. And so it's like, I don't know if we should stop here. Let's keep going. So they made it up through Texas. They made it up through Oklahoma, and they made it into the Midwest. And they went, wow, look at all the green. Look at all the trees. Look at all the rivers. Look at all the light. Holy crap. And so they stayed. But to the point, they brought some of their culture with them. And that culture was, they just left the Inca building, big, tall stone structures. And then they get to Middle America and there's no rocks. Now, what do you do?
Yeah, it's a good question.
If you bring that culture with you. So one of the things was that in North Georgia, one of the chiefs of the Coosa tribe never walked unless he wanted to, but they carried him everywhere. And so the chief of that tribe had this, almost like jungle kind of thing, but it was that he was so highly respected, and that, so he had, litter bearers that carried him around.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they say that you had to have a chief that commanded that kind of devotion in order for the guy to say, hey, we're going to build a 100-foot mound over here. Y'all get your baskets out. And they go, yeah, for Unca Punka, we're going to build a mound, And so, but it had to do with how much devotion they had to the chief. And it seems from artifacts that some of there's tin work and brass and Native Americans, I've seen them work in silver, and some of their artwork does not look the same.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
The old artifacts absolutely look like they come from South America.
Well, and who's to say that, here, Carol says, Arkansas Mountain turned up 18,000 petrified 2-foot tall people, according to the Archivist channel. And that was interesting stuff. So, here they turned up a bunch of 2-foot people. Maybe there was a race of small people too.
Yes. Where in Arkansas? Because I've been all over the state, and I've seen some things up in the mountains, and I'm curious, where in Arkansas?
Well, if I find her, which is, let her reply to that, I hope. Yeah, I don't know where it was. That was just the first I ever heard of that. Okay. Yeah, there's lots of stuff out there that we just don't know about, and I think it's a great question, and I think either the government is hiding a lot of that, or somewhere along the line, or maybe they just don't know, or they don't want us to know. She says, do you all believe in ice core dating, even though we have maps 300 years ago with no ice? Yes. Ice core dating, I think, is pretty relevant. Whatever. Yeah. What do you think? Ice core. Relevant. Yes, that's it. I knew if I heard it said, I could repeat it. But yeah, it was. Oh, here's it. It was thought to be a mountain, but they dug in and found people in mid-Arkansas. Huh. I'll have to look into that one. Definitely look into that. So maybe I'll Google it while we're talking. But anyway, there's stuff out there. They're finding stuff all the time. Like this one book I got where, talks about the Ohio Valley and how all the stuff that they found. So anyway, I wrote down a whole bunch.
Running across things in Ohio, down around Serpent Mountain, and there's over in Kentucky and into the Virginia. There was a lot of stuff going on up there, and we've talked about it. But let me state this to you. How come they went and dug these things up and all, and blah blah blah? One main reason, because there was a group of, sure enough, gotta say it, white people that just had to wipe out anything that didn't show white people. So if it was a giant, if it was Native American, tear it down, cover it up, bulldoze it over. And so there was a lot of stuff. And there were people that just hated the Indians. So they would dig up mounds and stuff just because they hated somebody. So things have disappeared, for that reason right there. Destroy it at all cost, because we cannot. When we get done with this conquering, there's going to be nothing left behind to show that there was anything here but us. That's what they want.
Yeah, I'm looking for some. I'm Googling it, trying to find if I can find something of that. But So far, no luck. I'm not that fast. Anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about in the beginning. And but thank you everybody for coming. Chet, thank you for coming. I haven't seen you for a while. The Crow 11, thank you for being here. Carol, Herring, and of course we got Chloe's in the house. She says you're looking awful good too. And Scotty Boy. Anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. The conquistadors that came through. Yes, Chet. The Spanish, they were bad. Oh, bad. So here we go. We're going to be moving into the Plains Indians. And so here's my spiel. I wrote this all down so I could remember what I was going to say. As the settlers from the colonies, they moved west, and so did the tribes of Indians. As we read about the colonies chasing them out, buying their land, they moved west and they pushed everybody else west. To break free of the European civilization. The natives, the Native Americans were changing with the adoption of the horse. And with the horse, they could conquer the plains and move. And they could move, they could have bigger families. They could hunt more buffalo quicker. The teepees got bigger because, hey, now they could, remember we talked about the 6-foot teepee versus the, 12-foot high teepee because, you couldn't haul that on your back. And your family couldn't be so big. Your tribe couldn't be so big because you couldn't move fast. You couldn't protect yourself. But with the advent of the horse and the trading from the European civilization for pots and pans and guns and clothing, as we mentioned here before, that clothing was one of the most important things that the natives really wanted. Okay. There was much open land to the west because the plains were pretty much empty, except for the buffalo, of course. So there was a lot of food out there, and the tribes grew quickly, conquering other tribes that didn't advance as fast. With guns and technology, when you got better technology, even with the advance of the horse, you can defeat your enemies, and that's what they were all about. It improved the tribe's well-being, but not without a cost. And as you were saying earlier, the white man brought disease, smallpox, that wiped out and cut tribes such as the Blackfeet in half by 50%, pretty much overnight. The Mandan from 2,500 to about 120. So, these people were being wiped out, from, like you said, the diseases. Some tribes flourished, such as the Apache and the Comanches, whose tribes, with the help of the horse, helped their tribes grow and become prosperous and wipe out their enemies and conquer other tribes even out of existence, either incorporating the tribe into their tribe or wiping them out completely. We remember such tribes as the Comanche, the Kiowas, the Arapaho, the Apache, the Assiniboine, the Cheyenne, the Blackfeet, the Navajo, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Hidatsa, the Mandan, Iowa, Sioux, Ojibwe, Nez Perce, Pima, Seminole, Cheyenne, Shoshone, Yuma, Zuni, Crow, Pueblo, Omaha, Pawnee, and the Ute, and many, many more that I didn't get to write down, because there's tons of tribes out there. We're going to talk about the famous chiefs such as Black Elk, Roman Nose, Sitting Bull, Red Cloud, Geronimo, White Bear, Quanah Parker, Bull Bear, Big Eagle, Black Kettle, Bloody Knife, Crazy Horse, Eagle Chief, Gray Thunder, High Backed Wolf, Ironheart, Little Crow, Little Raven, Long Dog, Cochise, Sitting Bear, Spotted Eagle, Wooden Leg, Speckled Snake, White Cloud, White Antelope, Skywalker, Six Feather, White Bull, Nochise, Nana, who was a woman of the Apache tribe, Ouray, Rainbow, and Jew. And that's just a few of the ones we're going to be looking at. And Carol says, my grandmother was pure Blackfoot. We grew up in northern Louisiana, but I think we came from Mississippi. Wow. But see, I think that was a lot because they were taking those tribes, remember, and they were taking a lot of them and putting them in Oklahoma. And then I suppose they left the Oklahoma and went other places. Could that possibly be? I don't know.
Yeah, and Oklahoma ain't far from Louisiana.
Yeah, like I said, they were Oklahoma. I got some maps here somewhere that just show, it was all one big giant reservation. And literally, they divided the whole state up into, smaller bits of, and territories for all these natives to go down there, and they just shipped them down. And if I can find that map in all my books,
yeah, because we discussed it a long time ago in one of our shows.
Yeah.
But one of the things was, as long as because the big muddy, the Mississippi, is they felt like if they couldn't get across the Mississippi easily without being seen, kind of thing. So move them to the other side of the tracks, if you will, and they're all right over there. Put that neighborhood over there on the other side of the tracks, and the river was the tracks.
That's true. Yeah, the river was the tracks. Hey, we were talking about the mounds. By chance, I found some of those mounds, believe it or not. And so let's just show those mounds since I found them. Hey, present here we go. Always finding stuff when you least expect it. I thought I'd never find those mounds. I didn't want to look for them. But here I don't know where this mound is, but it is. This is one of the mounds that would have been built. I got another one. This is Serpent Mound, as you can see here. There we go, Serpent Mound. I'm sure you've been there, haven't you?
Yeah, and I'm telling you, if you could ever get a trip to go there, you got to be able to walk around the whole thing slowly and take it in. And if you're spiritual at all, you're going to feel some energy. And I can't explain it, but they have a bench at the nose of the thing, and that overlooks the valley where they claim the meteor came through and gouged a big spot in the dirt. And to the left of that tree line, it drops off. And that's where the meteor came in, however many thousands, millions of years ago. And so, but then the natives built this snake right on the edge of the cliff. So that it's just interesting. But if you're anywhere nearby and can drive over there and visit it, I would say it's worth the trip.
Yes. Let's go check this. These are big mounds. You got to remember, these people are moving this dirt apparently with baskets. That's a lot of dirt to move. That's like 10 or 500 dump trucks worth.
That's more than that.
Well, probably. I'm just guesstimating. You know what I mean? But I mean, to do that with baskets and people, that would take you a while. And where are you getting this dirt from? It didn't look like it come right around here.
That's one of the other things. Kolomoki Mounds has a ditch right behind it, and that where the dirt came from. But when I went to the mounds in Macon, and then I've been to the Etowah Mounds up further north, it's like, where did you get the dirt? So that means not only did they have to dig it, they had to carry it a long way. A long way, and then pile it up. So they really had to like the chief. It really had to be um, the folks really had to believe in it. It was a
Oh,
spiritual thing. They just
yeah,
didn't do it because they were being slaves or whatever. No, they built it because they needed to. They had to. There was
yeah.
something about it. Got to build this mound, and they did,
And you
which is a
can,
different kind of theory, thought process than what some folks would like to say.
oh yeah, I agree. But whatever this is, these even the settlers, like on this in this drawing, there's a mound in the middle of nowhere, and here you are, just it's flat land everywhere, and you got a mound there. Who put that dirt there, kind of thing. So, and here let's take a look at an aerial view of what might be. Oh, this is Serpent Mound. No, this ain't Serpent Mound. I don't know what this one is. It's supposed to be a mound right here somewhere. Anyway, um, oh, effigy mounds in Wisconsin. Yep. So there you go. But yeah, there's lots of mound stuff going on, and
But
it's all preserved.
and yeah, most of it is, yeah. And to the point though, the mounds are proof. The mound builders all across, and then when you get out west, they're the cliff dwellers. So,
Yeah,
they didn't have to build something, although Chaco Canyon, they did a lot of stonework. So
yeah,
the biggest thing in the east is the biggest thing building material they had was the dirt.
yeah. No, I
So
agree with that. Like I said, there was plenty of mounds. Um, all in West Virginia, all over the place. So there was lots of mounds. Just put it that way. They were all over the place, and I'm bet you they'll discover more. You know what I mean?
yes, and there's a couple of YouTube channels that go out and just some of them are looking for caves and some of them are looking for different things, and it's like they've come across some smaller mounds on the side of a mountain, and it's like, where did this come from? And it's
Yeah.
on private land, but here's two or three mounds on the side of this mountain. Wow, okay. And then over here, whoa, look, there's a couple more. So, and I've been up in North Georgia in the Chattahoochee National Forest, and this was years ago, but I'm at a campsite and was just out walking around, checking out the local area. And I found this stone, it was stones piled up, and it was
Mm-hmm.
real big at the base, I guess about 2.5, 3 feet. And then it got up and, about 3 feet high. And then it got a centerpiece. And then it got up a little higher with a rock on top. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, look at this. I wonder. And then later on, somebody told me this said, yeah, well, there, an important chief must have been buried there
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's how they would, if he fell in that spot and they just buried him there, which was on a low spot, so they just buried him right there and put rocks to show that, where he was. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, so there, it wasn't a mound, but sometimes it's just a pile of rocks.
That is true. That is true. Remember, you were talking about a meteor shower. I got to mention this because I was just reading this earlier about the meteor shower, and I shout out the She Logic. Thank you for joining us tonight. I haven't seen you around, but thank you for coming. And it's in the beginning of this book, and it was talking about the how the Great Indian Peace Council, and then it's talking about the white men were trying, dating. We're going to go by years. We were talking about how long ago it was, but here I'll just read this little paragraph. It says the white man would have said the year was 1840, but by the Indian way of counting years, it was 7 winters since the great shower of meteors, which they called the winter the stars fell. It was 9 summers since the Comanches had lanced to death a hairy paleface said by the Mexicans to be the famous explorer Jed Smith. It was only 2 summers since the people who were now considering peace had fought a bloody battle against each other on Wolf Creek. Try to keep time by that standard. It was 9 summers ago. There was a meteor shower when the stars fell, but I can't remember. you know what I'm saying?
Well,
how would you remember all that without writing it down? They must have had superior memories than we do.
Listen, they went by full moons. We've duck moon, this moon, harvest moon, so but they went by moons so many moons ago. So they, it was 28 and a half days, 28 days, but they went by moons. So, well, there's one full moon and it was springtime. There's another full moon, it's summertime. There's another full moon, it's fall. So yeah, they remember it.
Yeah,
because it was the big event, full moon.
Yeah,
they usually had a full moon ceremony, and or at least a cookout. So, but you know what I mean? It's like, but it was something to remember, and they were easy to count.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying is that this is all passed down through oral tradition, and I'm just, my curiosity is getting the best of me, and I wonder how many oral traditions, or legends and things were lost when all those the natives were dying off from smallpox and things like that. I mean, literally wiping out, most of the tribe. Only a few to carry on the burden. Would those few people remember all the stories? Makes you think, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's a shame because there were so many traditions that were lost because of folks dying out. So for example, grandma and grandpa knew all the stories, but they were the first ones to go. So the younger ones survived, but they didn't get to hear the stories, and so the tribe might have survived, but not the stories because of events. And, and then there are the wars, and then there was the stuff the white man did just to simply wipe out the Indian. And, and so if you've done any research, and I've talked to several Indian folk from Canada and up north, up in there, I can't name the city, but anyway, they were like from the Blackfeet and Blackfoot, and up along the Canadian border. And they talked about how when the French came in, and and then other folks that sent the Jesuits in, all the children were picked up and sent off to the Indian schools. And so during that time, they were at the Indian schools. They were beaten and flogged and, just treated nasty. They couldn't speak their own language. They couldn't talk their own, tell their own stories. And so by the time they were released from the white schools, from the Indian schools, then they had lost their traditions. It had been forced out of them. And by the time they got home, sometimes the men were carted off to something or arrested or whatever and left the women alone. And some of them were mistreated and tried to keep up. And a lot of them died because they didn't have the children to help them. And so, so there was another third of the population that died just because they sent their kids to the Indian schools.
Yep. And that's the way, if you can get rid of the old and then you get rid of some of the young, you basically lost that whole, I think that's why a lot of them don't know really what is their heritage is about. I feel bad for them, I really do.
Yes, and there are some of these Indian groups that have come back from the Indian schools because I went to a weekend conference one time, and there were a bunch of folks there talking, and they were given it was a Methodist group, and they were talking about how they found God and Christ and all this, and it was very interesting. And
Mhm.
but they were talking about how bad these schools were to the Indians because they tried to wipe them out socially and spiritually. But
Mhm.
so they let them go back home. But when they got home, everything had changed so much, and there was nobody there to tell them the stories.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I you are
And
totally right.
and and talk about the culture. I mean, because by the time they got back, which sometimes 3, 4, 5, 10 years, depending, that when they got back, that they didn't live in teepees; they lived in little huts or houses now, and they didn't do this. And Mama worked at the trade store down at the thing, and they didn't hunt buffalo anymore. I mean, so things had changed a bunch. So
Yeah.
imagine that. Imagine growing up and everything that you knew, and you were forced to go to a school that you didn't want. You couldn't talk to your brothers and sisters and cousins and other folks from your tribe or other tribes in any native language. Like if you had some little secret code, you could talk between you, they would punish you. And, tie you to the wall kind of thing in the basement and not feed you for a couple of days. And then, I
Yeah.
mean, that's how cruel these folks. And they were the religious schools.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what makes me question things. If you're so God fearing, why are you doing that? It's just terrible. But anyway, that is what we're going to be talking about in the near future. In the next a few episodes, we're going to be going to the plains and talking about all these. There's so many fascinating stories. Like it says, I enjoy. We are just in a way we're really lucky that we had the technology and the people willing to go out west when the natives were still natives back in the 1840s and 50s. And even though they were hostile, they went out there and recorded their story. They took their pictures. They did these things. And we're lucky enough to have that a record of those people. And like we were doing pictures before, we are lucky that we have these pictures. Yeah, as soon as this thing boots up, and I'll share some of these pictures today. And these pictures some of these pictures are newer, some are older. We're just going to go through a few of these like we did last week, but real quick because it's getting the 10 o'clock hour. We want to get to our story, don't we?
Yeah, and I didn't mean to fill up so much time, but one of the things is that not all white men were bad. I mean,
No,
the French
no, no.
trappers got along with the folks along the St. Lawrence Seaway on both sides, all up in Canada. They trapping and fur trapping and stuff. They got along. They took wives. They lived with, sometimes, maybe not in the tribe, but right on the edge. So not everybody, hated the Indians, but there were folks
Mhm.
like Custer. Oh yeah, Armstrong Custer. He just hated the Indians. We're going to wipe them out. They're savages.
No, no,
And
yes and no. No, now wait a minute. Wait a minute. That isn't all Ira. Yeah, that's what we put on him. Actually, in all respects, he admired the Indians. He was just sent out there to do a job. And his job was to contain the Indians or wipe them out. And he he actually had, I think he had a woman Indian servant that he had a little on the side, believe it or not. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I
well,
read
but
about
here,
Custer. He wrote the articles about, or in his notebook or in his memoirs or something like that, about how he admired the Indians, really.
Right, but it's that he did it with gusto.
Yeah, when he did, was out there to wipe them out, he really wiped them out,
He
But
really
like I
wiped
said,
them out. It was like, and so at the Little Bighorn, right?
yeah,
The one of his other colonels or something in a group of men, they like backed off. And if Custer had been smart, he'd have backed off that day. But no, he had to be the hero. So that's sort of what I mean. He hated them in that he to his death he was going to shoot his last bullet rather
well,
than give up and say, okay, maybe there's too many of you.
well,
um,
the thing is these guys that were in the fighting in the war of the Confederacy, right, for the Civil War, and they were fighting against those. They were battle hardened men, and when they came out west and seeing these natives who basically had bow and arrows yet to shoot at them with, they seemed like they were invincible. Remember the story of Shiving? I think it was Shivington, and he said, "Give me 25 men, and I'll wipe them all out." Right? And he ran. He went down to the village with the Indians and started a fight, and they killed him and all his men. I think that was Shivington. But anyway, but he was bragging how, he just had, so many men, he would go out there and he'd take care of all of them. He'd wipe all the Indians off the face of the earth. And I think Custer had that mentality too, because they would run into villages. Remember, they would go into villages of women and children and old men and teepees, and they'd burn the teepees down and kill all the women and children and whatever men were there. And then they would be like, "We won this victorious battle." Well, no, yeah, you went into a bunch of teepees and killed everybody. You know what I'm
well,
saying?
you did a story about that. There was it was some kind of along, I don't know, maybe it was like a Wolf Creek or something like that. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Custer, but they went right on in there and claimed it as this big glorious battle. And there was little kids and grandparents in there,
Yes.
and
That's what.
and
Yeah,
that
that was
then
the
they wondered
Cheyenne,
why.
and
Then they
that was
wondered why when Daddy came home that they were so pissed,
well, and that was that one where I think it was Black Elk, and Black Elk had made a peace with the white man, and said him and his tribe were going to settle down by the creek, and they said, "Sure, okay, go ahead." And so he did, and they said, "Fly an American flag over your teepee so we know that you're a friendly tribe," right? And so he did. And then, of course, one of the guys went out, and he took his troops, and they marched down. They were looking for some rebel Indians that were raiding, wagon trains or something. And they went down there and said, "Look, a tribe of Indians." And they rushed down there and started shooting and burning and killing and, whatever, and killed most of the whole village off. And most of them were women and children, and the warriors were all out hunting for food. And that's the whole. And then, of course, that enraged not only the Cheyenne but the Arapaho and the Sioux and everybody, because the story spread like wildfire. And as the story spread, all the Indians got enraged because Black Elk had just made a peace treaty with the white man, and they said, "Don't worry, we're not going to harm you." And then they went down there and killed them all. So what do you do?
Yeah, I know that the last time I was out west, there are still folks out there who still use the same line, and that the only good Indian is a dead Indian. And that
Yeah.
if you claim any Indian heritage, these folks, they're it's almost like they belong to a club. It's almost like they're KKK or something. It's strange. And I mean, we've got some folks every once in a while. I'll run across somebody down here because there are a lot of Cherokee and Creek down here, and Seminole. But no, only good Indians a dead Indian. Like what the fudge? This is 2024 for crying out loud. What? What?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. I
So
hope
they're
people, you
still
hopefully
bitter
understand
about
the picture.
the native folk. So anyway, but I wear it proud. I'm only like a quarter ish, but I'm proud.
Yeah, but you got to hang out with a bunch and learned a lot, and that's more powerful too. The thing is like we were talking about the oral tradition and seeing and talking to people is really powerful because it ain't written down anywhere.
And
You know,
listening, I listened to Koshka LaRue, who was a true legend keeper from the Tlingit.
yeah,
And the stories that he tells are the legends are true to them. And
yeah,
so it's like to be able to sit and around and just have a chat. We'd eat together after the powwow and we'd go to a restaurant or something and, tell jokes and whatever. He was a mathematician, had went off and done his thing and then came back to the tribe. And he was in his 80s back then, but he still got around and he had masks that were made that were hundreds of years old, dancing masks and things. And they were on loan from the tribe. And that when he died, they were supposed to go to the Alaska um, thing for the Native Americans. But anyway, but just fascinating, man. Fascinating story, legends, fascinating, carvings and things that he had. Just amazing.
yeah, yeah. Okay, what do you got for a story tonight?
I don't know. Go back to that one when them folks zoom into that.
Says this is a dancing into the medicine lodge. That's what the headline is.
Yeah, you see how close together they are?
Yep.
And it says what? Dancing to the medicine lodge?
Yep. It says dancing into the medicine lodge. Arikara.
Um, if they were going into like a sweat lodge kind of deal, then they have done a ceremony and that, the circle starts way out and then it gets closer together and then there's smudging going on. And then as the medicine group, if there's a shaman, they might smudge the whole group and then they'll be smudged before they go into the lodge individually.
Mm-hmm.
I was taught that. So
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, there we go. We're going to stop there. And, oh, 1 million pumpkins. Hello. Nation are under discussion. All of them. We are talking about the future. The next few next episodes, we've been doing the East Coast, and now we're moving on to the Plains Indians. So, Native Americans of the Plains. We're going to be talking about the next probably several months, I suppose, because there's so many tribes. How about that? Okay, well, it's time for the story tonight. How about
can I
that?
add one other thing while it's on my mind? Because I might not remember next week or next month. But
Okay.
in listening to how did the white man basically take over America, you know, and that how the French came in up through the St. Lawrence River, way up on the East Coast, up in Newfoundland, and came down into the Great Lakes, and so they started populating along the Great Lakes in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and all along in there, right, and up in
Mhm.
Canada too. And so um, that area got populated because there was the Iroquois, and I can't remember the other tribes that were up there, but that they were able to get along with the natives, and
Mhm.
north of the St. Lawrence River, and we talked about this in one of the one of our story nights, in that the British were on this side of the river and the French were on the other side of the river. And I've
Mhm.
not seen the St. Lawrence Seaway, but apparently it's pretty big because great big ships go up and down it. So, you just don't walk across it. Um,
Yep.
so, with that said, and there were a lot of skirmishes and wars along there too for, control, I guess, of the shoreline.
Well,
Um,
yeah. Well, the river. Remember, the rivers and seaways were the highways and interstates of days gone by. And if you had control of the interstate, well, man, you could get whatever tolls you want.
Right. And so, and there was a lot, but that I don't know if I think that I don't know if the natives did it so much, but when the French came over, they were big about building rafts.
Yeah.
They were big about building rafts and floating stuff down the river. So,
Well,
if they got some, huh?
the French, that's what the Indians didn't mind the French so much because the French weren't after their land, they were after their furs. And when the Americans came, they were after land for
Yeah,
farming and settling
that's
and
right.
and things like that. And so in that respect, they didn't like the Americans because hey, you're taking my land. And then my furs too, whereas the French are just traders. They were setting up forts and trading and things like that. And of course, once the Americans bought that land, and they literally bought the tribes too. It was a bad deal all around.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
something I heard a statistic the other day, and now I have been to Canada myself, to Toronto several times, and
Mm-hmm.
to work as an engineer with a business there. And so I had the opportunity to meet and speak with some folks. And I noticed then that, you know, there was a lot of Islamic kind of stuff up there. I mean, signs, restaurants, I mean, just massage parlors, Korean, German, Russian. I could not believe how many Russians are in Canada. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there was about 15 women in this plant there that where I was doing the work, and they were all Russian, and they could speak broken English and a little bit of French, but but the thing that I heard just the other day is that 65% of Canada is now immigrants. They are
Wow.
not born native Canadians. 65%. And I was like, I, I, I met very few real Canadians when I was in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was from some other country. I
Yep.
mean, even the engineers there were from like Argentina and Venezuela and there's a country along South America. But anyway, very good engineers, very but they weren't Canadian either. So it's like what? Anyway,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so folks are still moving in.
All right. Well, what do we got tonight? I hope I'm on the right page, right?
I'm going to start one page up only because there's a little poem there.
Oh, one page down. Okay, this is the one, right? I got it.
Ye who believe.
Yep. Okay, the show is yours.
All right, it's officially story time instead of just yakking time. Ye who believe in the beauty and strength of a woman's devotion, list to the mournful tradition still sung by the pines in the forest. The Indian plume. Severe had been the winter for the tribe on the shores of the lake of the clustered stars. Long had the snow lain on the ground, and constantly had the cold wind blown. It had not been a good season for hunting either, and long trips had to be taken on snowshoes in order to shoot the fleet-footed deer. Even now, though the late April sun was shining, there was ice floating in the lake, and patches of snow gleamed white in the forest. New life was just beginning to show itself in the hearts of the Indian people, and there was stir and movement in the village. Thank offerings were made to the Great Spirit that the winter was over, and many were the rejoicings at the greening of the grass and the swelling of the buds on the trees. Very happy indeed was the tribe, until suddenly a strange sickness appeared among them. Young and old alike, it attacked, tortured them a few hours, and left them cold and dead. Panic spread through the village, and a despair which even the cold of the winter had not produced settled down. Such was the state of affairs in the tribe of the Saranaks as the beautiful spring came on, when the wild creatures ran merrily about the forest, and the fish again sported in the sparkling water. It is a punishment sent by the Great Spirit, Siwani, and the chief is to smoke the calumet pipe tonight when the moon rises. Surely, Flying Arrow, the Great Spirit will hear our prayers and lamentations when the smoke of the sweet calumet ascends to him. The speaker was a girl of the tribe, perhaps in her 7th year. Tall she was and very beautiful as she stood in the afternoon sunlight by the side of the straight-limbed brave, her promised husband. I cannot tell. It may be that there will have to be a sacrifice ere the Great Spirit removes his displeasure from us. Think you the chief will offer the white dog to appease the Great Spirit's wrath? I know not. It may be that even the blood of one of the tribe will be needed before this dreadful quick death will go from our midst. That would indeed be horrible, replied the girl with a shudder, as she pressed closer to the arrow's side and clasped her hands about his arm. Do not be afraid, my Siwani. When this plague has left the village, then the chief will bless us, and I will take thee to the wigwam I have but now finished. Come, let us go down to the lake. The canoe is waiting and it grows late. With these words, the two passed from sight among the trees, following a trail to the little beach, where the slender birch bark craft was pulled up out of the water. One by one, the furtive wild creatures, finding themselves in possession of the silent knoll, scampered from their hiding places and ran to and fro, busy, most of them, looking for their spring quarters or on the search for food. Quick death ever stalks among the creatures of fur and feather, but beyond being ever alert for the sound or smell of enemies, little they trouble themselves. As the shadows lengthened and finally disappeared in the enveloping twilight, the sounds gradually ceased, and the little knoll sank into the darkness of the growing night, till the light of the rising moon reached it through the stems of the sharply pointed balsams which surround it. In the Indian village, a great stillness reigned. Not the stillness of the balsam grove, but the stillness which is sometimes noticed when numbers of people are gathered together, waiting tensely. Slowly the smoke ascended as the chief puffed at the long-stemmed sacred pipe. The fire sank to a bed of glowing coals, and the moon rose ever higher and higher. Still in silence, the chief smoked on, till at last the pipe was burnt out, when he rose, and without a word he disappeared within the doorway of his wigwam. Slowly the people scattered, exchanging now and then a word, but for the most part silent. Night settled down, but there was not rest for the Indians. The dreaded quick death still strode among them, striking down one after the other. Cries and groans filled the night. The Great Spirit had not heard their prayers, while the smoke of the calumet ascended to him. Morning dawned on a now thoroughly grief-stricken people. In vain the chief spoke to them words of encouragement. In vain he bade them assemble for the sacrifice of the sacred white dog. No hope showed itself on the countenances of the now sadly diminished tribe. Silently they looked on while the chief killed and burned the spotless animal. In the meantime, Siwani, in passing the new wigwam of Flying Arrow, heard her name called in agony, and, hesitating, but one moment she entered the low doorway, and her eyes becoming accustomed to the darkness, she described Flying Arrow lying on his mat, tossing in agony. One glance told her he was a victim of the terrible plague. With one low cry, she fell on her face beside him. Then, lifting his head on her lap, she laid her cool hand on his hot brow, and strove to quiet him. Useless her caressing touch. His tossing and raving continued. Frequently among his mutterings, she heard the words, Siwani, Great Spirit, and blood sacrifice. Finally, the long limbs straightened themselves. The fire died out of his eyes, and looking up into her sorrowing face, he breathed rather than spoke the words. Happy hunting grounds, Siwani, come. She sat quietly holding his head pressed to her for some moments, the tears slowly dropping from her eyes. Then quickly but gently, she closed the eyes, laid the head again on the mat, and hurried to where the tribe was gathered. As she walked rapidly along, the meaning of the arrow's last words came to her, and her resolve shaped itself. Reaching the assembled tribe, now just dispersing, she dropped on her knees before the chief and told him of what had taken place, how Flying Arrow, with his last breath, had bid her come to the Great Spirit. Then standing upright, with outstretched arms, she said, O my people, to rid us of this plague which has come among us, it is needed that one must die willingly. The Great Spirit has not taken it from us, though the calumet has been smoked and the white dog slain. Who should better die than I? All desire for life is gone from me with the passing of the breath of Flying Arrow. With these words, she commenced a slow swaying motion, at the same time singing her death chant. Gradually, the motions quickened as the chant increased in volume till it was almost a song of triumph. At a moment when the song was almost glorious, she raised her right hand and plunged a dagger in her heart. Tenderly, the stoical Indians lifted her from the ground, stained red with blood, and bore her away for burial beside her grave. That day, there were no more victims to the quick death. And when morning dawned, serene and beautiful, they found raising its head to the sunlight on the spot where Siwani's blood had stained the ground, the glorious blossoms now called Indian plume. The quick death never appeared again among the Saranaks, and they always remembered Siwani and her sacrifice. For wherever the Saranacs wandered, the Indian plume sprang up and still grows. The end.
Wow, that was, we were just talking about plagues.
I know.
How appropriate is that?
As I started reading it, I was like, oh my God, did I plan this?
I don't think
this was Indian plumes. I just like, well, okay, I thought maybe it might be a feather or something, or something named after us. Well, it is a flower that's named after that now. But oh my goodness, and how appropriate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The quick death. Exactly. That's interesting. But yeah, I can imagine there was probably, tales told of that because, it was the quick death because when the smallpox would come, they had no immunity to it. And what better way to describe it is quick death? And of course their answer for that could be, things like we talked about, sacrificing an animal to the gods of some sort. Hey, don't let this plague kill us all, kind of thing. I mean, when you got something going on and you don't understand it, you're going to do whatever you can to in your knowledge and grasp to
Well,
figure it out.
and there's something about the belief of the people. It's like building the mounds. Who gets a bunch of people with baskets to do that, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
who, and this one, she said it had to be a willing. Somebody had to volunteer. So it wasn't like they drugged somebody off. She said, "No, take me." So that's interesting in and of itself, in that, one sacrificed herself for the many. Then
Yep.
it just so happened that it worked out that way. Of course, she didn't know that, or maybe
Yeah,
from the other side, you know what I mean?
I
But
do.
was her sacrifice in vain? Did it really help the people? But from the story, it was that. There you go. So while we were yakking, I'm shuffling cards. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. 1 million pumpkins says I read the reason that Native Americans had no immunity to smallpox was, aka cowpox, was because Europeans domesticated cattle. Indians didn't have to, and the land was run wild with herds. Yes, the farmers just let the cows run. There was also other animals that they brought, like pigs that carried diseases, but mostly when traders would come in, a lot of times they would be sick or whatever and contagious, or would bring that sickness. And then, the trading was going on. So, of course, like you all know, that you don't get sick the first day. You could get infected and, maybe get sick a day or two later. And you don't know, hey, I don't feel so good. Well, next thing you know, you got the medicine man. He's trying to do stuff with you, and you're laying in the tent or the teepee, and your family members are trying to feed and clothe you, and you sneeze on them or you cough on them or they touch you, and now they got it and they spread it and they carry it to the neighboring tribe, and next thing you know, 20 miles down the road, everybody's got it too. And you're like, it's magic. How's it doing this? That's what I would be thinking.
well, and also, flu viruses are really nasty.
Yeah. When you get,
And
do
flu.
you know where it came from? Not usually. Could have been at the grocery store and got the flu.
No, but I mean, back in those days, it could have been a flu virus.
Yes, yes. But it takes a while
Um,
for that virus to mature too. You don't get it and then tomorrow you're sick and dying. You would carry it for a day or two or maybe three, and as you traveled along, and how
yeah,
many
it has
people
to
do it?
incubate.
And then usually while it's incubating them first few days is when you are the most contagious. It's not when you finally broke your fever and you're done with it. It's while you're just getting going.
Well, so they have a big, full moon dance. Everybody gets together and has supper and dances, and then they go home back to their, and then they all start getting sick because they've all been together at the powwow. So, but anyway, It seems like there's 5 cards tonight. And we've got 4 of them we ain't had in a while. And 3 of them are upside down. So let's get into this. The first one out is skunk. The next one out is armadillo. The third one out, these cards are upside down, is wolf. Now, I think we had wolf last week. Now, the next one up is spider. And I know it's been a while for spider. And owl. Now, I think owl has been up more recent than these other 3. But anyway, so those are the cards for tonight. Oh, I'm sitting here like dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum. I got to get the book out. So skunk is number 7, and I opened the book at number 6. Skunk is reputation, and we know that by the skunk smell that it's got a reputation. And the key word for the skunk is respect. Unlike any other animal, skunk does not threaten. And it, doesn't hunt for prey, right? Skunk is teaching you that by walking your talk and by respecting yourself, you will create a position of strength and honored reputation. The carriage of your body relates to others when you believe about yourself. So when you have confidence and faith in yourself, it does show through. But in the contrary, skunk medicine is operating through the contrary, indicates that your self-esteem may seem to others as if you're putting on airs. That's interesting. Otherwise, whether or not you are repelling others in your vicinity because of envy, jealousy, or projection of their low self-esteem. So be careful. There are times when it's like there are other people that will stink up the situation and want to blame it on you. So in leaking vital energy, you may be stinking up your environment. So if you're leaking energy, especially if you're leaking energy and giving it to others and you give them your power, to balance the cause and effects of your actions and energy flows, you must decide whether or not you need to spray in the directions of others to repel their envy, greed, jealousy, or whatever they might have. On the other hand, you need to always maintain your right to be who you are. Self-respect is the key. Skunk says if your ego is not your amigo, it stinks. Now, the next one up is armadillo, which is number 28. I almost got there. Go ahead and hide and roll up. This armadillo is about boundaries. What a gift it is to set your boundaries so that harmful words or intentions just roll off. Your lesson is in setting up what you are willing to experience. If you do not wish to experience feeling invaded, call on armadillo medicine. Now that's the positive. You set up your boundaries. So sarcastically is a message of reversed armadillo. You may think that the only way to win in your present situation is to hide. In other words, curl up in a ball. or to pretend that you are armor coated and invincible. But this is not the way to grow. It is better to open up and find the value and strength of your vulnerability. If you're afraid of something, stand up and face that fear the best way that you know how. Vulnerability is the key to enjoying the gifts of physical life and allowing yourself to feel a myriad of expressions are made available. For instance, the true compliment is an admiration flow of energy. If you are afraid of being hurt and are hiding from feeling anything, you will never feel the joy of admiration from others. So you got to get out from underneath your rock. The underside of armadillo is soft, but its armor will protect the softness of the boundaries. Hiding from your true feelings and fearing failure or rejection will amplify your need for more cast iron protection. In other words, the more you're in fear, the more you live in self doubt, the more you will want to cover yourself with armor. And don't do it unless it's necessary. Number 15. Now, if you're truly being attacked by somebody, then, put the armor of God around you. But if you curled up in a ball because you're of fear of something, then you need to, figure out how to get away from that. Now, Wolf is the teacher, and Wolf is represented by the dog star in Sirius. And the senses of wolves are very keen, and the moon is its power ally. If you've drawn the wolf card, you may be able to share your personal medicine with others. And it's about home and family, because the wolf is the pathfinder. Wolf is the teacher. But now wolf upside down says, if the wolf is reversed, you're being asked to expand your limited viewpoint of the present situation, whatever that present situation is. Doing this may entail a great deal of courage and a willingness to look at new ideas. It could also require that you delete some old ideas to make room for more expansiveness within you. That always comes when you're willing to learn. If you're willing to learn something and you're sure enough at it, man, you can study and dig into it, and you don't feel tired and it's, invigorating. So contrary wolf may also be telling you that stagnation or fear of asserting your viewpoint has bogged down the flow of change in your life. Now, Armadillo just said that, you might be hiding for the wrong reason, to open up and to allow more stuff to come in. So there's two cards right there that are sort of agreeing with one another. So the next card in is Spider, and it is about the web of life. Yep. Let's see, 43. There's one more. And it's right side up. 43 is weaving the spider. The web that brought the humans the first picture of the alphabet. The letters were part of the angles of her web. Now, Wolf is the teacher, and here's Spider weaving the letters of the alphabet. Deer asked Spider what she was weaving and why all the lines look like symbols. And Spider said, why, dear, it is time for Earth's children to learn to make records of their progress in their Earth walk. Deer answers Spider, but they already have pictures that show through symbols the stories of their experiences, said Deer. Yes, said Spider, but Earth's children are growing more complex. and their future generations will need to know more. Pay attention to this. Their future generations will need to know more. The ones to come won't remember how to read the petroglyphs. So it was that Spider wove the first primordial alphabet. As she had woven the dream of the world that had become manifest. The web of fate also represents a wheel of life, which does not include any alternatives or solution. It is typically human to get caught up in the polarity of good or bad fortune without realizing that we can change it at any time. We can change the polarity of good or bad fortune without realizing that we can change it at any time. If we are not decisive enough about changing our lots in life, we may end up being consumed by our fears and limitations. What did Armadillo say? Face your fears. And what is Skunk saying? Make sure that things aren't being, your energy isn't sucked out, and that you stand your ground. Be your reputation. Spider brings a message of a different kind when she sees you becoming a bit too involved in the weaving. Before you're too involved in weaving to notice opportunities at the outskirts of your web. Spider gets your attention so that you notice that something you have woven has borne fruit. Spider caught you just in time before you missed the opportunity on the edge of your web. In other words, keep an eye out on your periphery. Be aware of all around you, not just what's, sitting right in front of you. The most important message from Spider is that you are an infinite being who will continue to weave the patterns of life and living throughout time. Y'all are a part of this. We are a part of this. Do not fail to see the expansiveness of the eternal plan. Now, with all these new presidential things and all this stuff and all that, so this is a time for a bunch of stuff to go on and a bunch of changes. So, however you are a part of it, there are folks out there who are afraid. They're terrified of MAGA folks. They're afraid to, like, oh my God, we're all going to get shot by the Navy, 21. And that deception is the owl. So that we're being deceived by some of these things. We're being deceived into fearing this stuff. So we got to open up. Armadillo, if you need to take a rest and ball up in a ball for a little bit, it's about setting boundaries. So, and Wolf is the teacher and Spider is the weaver of the future. And it has not been manifest yet. And Owl is talking about deception. We have to keep our eyes open so that we will not be deceived. So owl medicine is symbolically associated with clairvoyance and astral projection. Owl is oftentimes the medicine of sorcerers and witches. Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom, had a companion owl on her shoulder, which revealed unseen truths to her. Owl had the ability to light up Athena's blind side, enabling her to speak the whole truth as opposed to only a half truth. If you pulled the owl card, you're being asked to use your powers of keen, silent observation to intuit or to look at a situation and perceive what it might be, some type of life situation. Owl is befriending you and aiding you in seeing the whole truth. In other words, something that might be fear and pushing up against your reputation. It might be that, you know, the owl needs to be there to be able to help you to see whether or not something is true or not, or whether or not it's false. So that's some interesting cards for tonight. So Al can bring you messages in the night through dreams or meditation. Pay attention to the signals and the omens. The truth always brings further enlightenment. So thank you all for hanging out with me while I got those cards and read them. I hope they made some sense.
Those were
Seems
good
like
cards tonight. I think we need them.
well, there's a lot of fear, and Spider is like the future, and gonna weave it. And Al, let us not be deceived by future events. Man, we all need that. I mean, at any time, we need to pay attention to future events and not be deceived. But, Armadillo's like, come on, get out of your shell. Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Show some confidence.
Exactly. So, great cards. There you go. Great cards for tonight. They get better and better. We need them at this time of, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and good cards to live by.
And they're simple.
Go. Yes.
And it's simple. It's not something complicated. Here's a simple message that anybody can live by. And a lot of folks are scared with stuff going on now. The Democrats are scared to death. They're all going to get sent overseas. I mean, come on. So we got to get out of this fear and use the wisdom of the owl and not be deceived by some of this craziness. That's just good medicine right there.
Yep. That's right. And let's see what else we got. We got one last thing. Everybody, remember Nina's holding a sale over at her shop, and she has mugs with my smiling face on there, and the Anacarano symbol. So go get your special holiday mug and t-shirts with and hoodies. They got hoodies. It's all good with my smiling face on it, of course. And you too can have a Milky Way Soul Tribe shirt for the holiday. It'd be the greatest ugly sweater a person could probably get. How about that, right? And it's a limited time only, so I just want everybody to have my smile, just like this. Have my smiling face on their chest. Anyway, that's my spiel for tonight. And remember, we'll be back on Saturday night. We've been talking a lot about death, but you know what? It's getting to be the end of the season, so maybe we should bring it back around to life on Saturday night. So join me then, and we're going to have a great show, 9 o'clock Central Time, like always.
And have a show tonight. You invited me on to talk about my near-death experience, and I never got to tell it. So
I
just thought I would mention that.
I'm going to have you back on, but yeah. Scotty Boy says no Thursday night show. Yes, there's going to be a Thursday night show. Me and Nina. I just haven't posted it yet. Yes, like and subscribe. Thank you, 1 Million Pumpkins, for showing up tonight. I see there's a whole lot of crowd in here. Let's see. Nub's Revenge, thank you. Haven't seen you before. Crow 11, thank you. Chloe's in the house. Who else do we have in here? We had a lot of people I haven't seen in Groovy Girl Rainbow. And let's see. Gee, it was on and on. Elderberry was here. We got, like I said, a lot of people tonight. Thank you, everybody who was watching, and we'll come back again. We'll do it all over again.
Thank you. Yep.
Yes. And yeah, go get yourself a shirt. Chloe says, oh my God, I ordered a shirt from a channel another day and the shipping was $16.99 for, yeah, shipping's expensive. Have you bought a stamp lately? Oh my God, they're like almost 85 cents or something like that. It's crazy how much a stamp is. I'm sending out Christmas letters and I'm thinking, well, that's your Christmas present. They're costing they're like expensive. Time you buy
What's it do? Is it going by Pony Express?
Oh, they're wanting to know, are you doing a show tonight?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You're gonna get that cup of coffee and you'll be back at it.
Yeah, give me 20 minutes. I gotta let the dog out, gotta tinkle, and get my coffee, and yep. Give me 20 minutes.
All right. Well, I hope everybody you learned something tonight. Next week, we're going to be doing more Native American stuff with the Plains Indians. Lots of stuff out there. You know why the Plains Indians are the ones people most refer to? It's because they were the most well recorded in their native state. That's pretty much what I figured out because, by the time we were going out there, they had cameras, they had people who were writing books and printing, industry was coming right along. And this was fascinating. Plus the government promoted it because it attracted people to go out west for an adventure. You know what I'm saying? It was quite the thing. Why wouldn't you go on an adventure?
Yeah, and in the 1830s, 40s, when they moved all the Indians across the Mississippi. So
Yeah.
whatever history or whatever the life of the Indian was, it was no more. It just did not exist. There were little pockets of Indians here and there, but that basically, so the history was wiped out on the East Coast. So so there was only that history to write down.
Yeah.
Not that it didn't exist, but it was, as you say, they had cameras then. They had folks go out there, who were painters and painted landscapes and the Indians, and so and beautiful pictures too, I might add.
Yes.
But anyway,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just lucky we have that to remember it all by. Because nowadays it's all, cut the trees down, pave a road. If you're in the way, you're slowing progress down. It's not the best thing in the world. Put up some power lines, build a house on top of that mountain because somebody owns it now. You know what I mean?
And it really is a shame that we lost the history of the East, all of the Eastern Indians.
Yes.
It really is because, culturally, it's a shame.
I mean, that was kind of the first thing when the Europeans got here. They literally, within 100 years tried to conquer all the Indians on the coast there, and yeah, it was bad. We've been talking about it, and they retaliated. The only problem is they didn't retaliate enough to drive us off the cliff. They just retaliated, and then we came back with thousands and thousands of more people landing on their shores. So,
and an interesting thing I heard today was that they were talking about Columbus, and they said that Columbus really tried. He tried to, with the Portuguese to, lend him a boat and everything, and they were like, no, listen, the Portugal was set up by the Knights Templar, and they all told Columbus, we've already been over there. We already know there's a land over there. we're not going to finance you. So then he went to the, the Queen of Spain. And, because Portugal, this little spot of land, was already ahead of them, they were like, yeah, go on, So, but anyway, it was interesting in that, Columbus discovered America. Oh, hell no, he didn't. The Knights
Yeah.
Templar and the Portuguese were over here before that. The Vikings, but anyway, I thought that was an interesting tidbit too,
Oh yeah,
But
I
anyway.
remember I did a few shows about that a while back
Oh
where
yeah.
they knew about America. They went over here. They sent the secret friars who they trained to map it all out, and then they sat on it. And I swear that at that point in time, the Pope had given the thumbs up and said, "Okay, go." Because Europe was going through a lot of hardships. They'd cut down all their trees, they'd fished all their streams, they farmed all the land. They'd gone through these plagues, and things were getting worse and worse and worse. They had no choice but to find a new land to get supplies from. It's just like when the Pilgrims came over. England had no trees. There was no trees to make ships from. So they cut down trees and sold logs to make boats in England. That's what their cargoes were, to ship over, is cut trees and sell trees. I mean, it's just unfathomable to think that they cut down all the forest in England. England right now has like 10% of its forest. That's it. And at some point in time, it was almost 75% forested, and they literally cut down all the trees and never replanted anything. How terrible!
And they dang near did it over here, because even in the state of Georgia, being one of the first original colonies, we've got these huge pine trees here, and they were using them, but they needed the big straight pine trees for their mast on the sailing ships, and also for boards. But so they started cutting, and they started clear cutting, buddy, and to this day, the longleaf yellow pine is now on the extinction level. I talked about this before, but to the point of the trees, they came over here and dang near did the same thing.
Yep, I know. Okay, well, let's wrap it up. And with that, everybody, go out and do something nice. If you found any of this information helpful, go out and check it out yourself. I'm sure there's just put it into Google or whatever search engine you like. Get a good book and read it too. There's nothing like, I'm always fascinated with these books, and that's the Time Life books. Love these things. There's always so much good stuff in there. But do your own research. I'm hope I sparked your interest in something. And with that, everybody, remember, 'tis the season. Go out, get to know your neighbor, do something nice for somebody, and most of all, be the frequency you want to receive, everybody. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.